Donald John Trump, my quantum twin. Why is he here? What really happened? Why is he an SCP? Well, fundamentals go as Megalomania, also as well as the Gorman, Megalomania, Trump, Gorman, Divinity Protocol, the fifth elemental recon age, the paradox divine effect. There are timelines that intermediated in the conjuncture between the main being, Don Trump, and the lower codings of several outputs. Gorman was a severed output in the negative replication speed, back indexed on several timelines before. Collapsus effect signalized to Megalomania, Mr. Don, those of the light, the head light the honcho, divine replicated being. Gorman again hints out to another being currently playing on the roles of the current Capitol building, Biden. That is why we have notified and noticed that Demon Perseverer. Demon Perseverer meaning there is a negative activator point. When Don came in perspective years ago, and his paranormal indexer point, along with my own entities and others, played the role. It activated the negative parts of things. The negative parts of things are the Gorman of the negatives, or the actual one negative activated point. And he relays into the house itself. After that goes to the divine in the fifth world.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 34. Blue, how are you?
I'm good today, Mike.
Hey, thanks for being with us, folks. Blue, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, one of the things we'll be speaking about is the pyramids and the connection to the electronic gridding system that connects with that, and the similarities between 2 points of transaction, between the electronics modules itself and the phone interfaces and other circuit codes. How the similar projects between both could pro-enact to extraterrestrial technologies from the past, and how these certain things from the present now could have been correlated through that certain energy, as well as a free indexer point through Elon Musk that could have similar quantum energies intact.
I love it. I have some things to share on that as well. Just some things from my own little brain here. Hey, it sounds like we're going to have a lot to talk about today. Folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And, wherever you're watching or listening to us, I appreciate that. But if you get your stuff somewhere else, just send me a message and I'll do my best to get on that preferred platform for you as well. I want to say hi to our friends from the UK across the pond. Again, great to hear from you. Blue, we got a lot to talk about today. Let's go ahead and get right into it.
Trilateral systems that have polarized in certain dimensional timeline drifts that acted as energetic grid-locking systems. It is why they have these similar transaction speeds in phone modules and computer data streams that enact through certain replicated codes between one indexer to the other. Energetic points of effect that circuit through cymatic points. There was more than just the 3 pyramids of Giza. There were numerous pyramids that were scattered abroad in certain symmetrical areas. A lot of them had been decimated upon impasse throughout the timelines. These interaction nodes also played out vital roles on electromagnetic fields. Those electromagnetic fields help to in disturbance lines, similar to what they do through phone and computer modules, the motherboard units. The cymology point from one transaction to the other, thus bringing forth free energy or an energetic relay code that can calculate and recon forward and stabilize upon impasse.
You know, one of the things I immediately thought of when I first was turned on to a similar notion in the past, but obviously we're diving in deep today, was that the pyramids were some sort of power station or energy point for maybe beings or creatures from another place. Maybe that's how they refuel or get energy for their craft, which I found was fascinating. And to me, it sounded like they were proposing that the pyramids, and I know there's a lot to read into it, the way they're placed and stars and so forth, but to me, it sounded like they were saying that they were like rest stops on the highway in space. Like you could stop over here at this rest stop and refuel. Is that similar to what you're saying?
Well, they had a lot of modulated homes with the trilateral platform. Some of them anti-grav polarity score into units itself. But there are transaction lines similar to gridding points that energetically in turn reload between each spectrum. Kind of like the circuit codes that they have through the diagnostic stream maintainment through the poles here between one pole indexer to the other, but they have a wire. This is not wire, this is wireless. So it's closer to what they have phone modules, electromagnetic frequencies that distribute between each other. And it co-ops through one point to the other, and energetically inbounds towards a whole area itself and creates a higher diagnostic stream of limitless amounts of energy, depending on what that correlation dilates with. That's why phone modules, yes, you can re-replicate the processing speed. They also even have similar now, where you can set it on something and it will charge it instantaneously. You get about instantaneous charging ports as well as trilateral platforms in connection to those recon points. Similar distribution scene.
So are we saying that if you look at the globe and where these pyramids are located on the globe, that they'll line up with Tesla's theory of where those points are around the Earth? Like they'll definitely be on one of those points?
Like Antarctica and Egypt had a lot more trilateral pyramids before then. A lot of them were decimated, like I said, upon impasse. In the ingrading system, if you look really close from up in space, you will find a seismology ingrading system, even to plutonically where those pyramids were once lost or decimated. You're going to find something on a point system that recons through an energetic and electromagnetic frequency outlet. It is similar to what they do on the programming speeds through the technologies currently here. Now, Musk, if relayed through ion Tesla inhibitors, which are recon point modules, similar to what these poles have, but without the wires, and a seismological note, pulls forward and main distributes to certain areas, and quantum IO recon energy points will help to stabilize upon impasse, correlating to be able to bring in that fundamental.
You know, we had talked about Tesla in the past and his desire to build this free energy, free electricity source. And he tried with this one tower in New Jersey, New York. And, you know, that very quickly got squashed. And of course, on his death, the government went in and seized all his papers and all his stuff. So my question is, do you think that's what Tesla was trying to do with that original tower, was recreate pyramids on points throughout the country here?
Well, pyramids or transactory points could be stabilized as an integrated system that can fortify as housing units or maintainment lines on smaller gridding systems that could help photonically stabilize the electromagnetic fields itself. But ion Tesla inhibitor poles are different. They're closer to the intact poles here nowadays, but they're more metallic alloy in structure, and they got like an ovalish, like that. You go up, turn, that type of ingrading system. Polarized, its magnetic polarity lines go intact without wires, and transactory at least 10 times more the amount than what normal electricity does.
Now, I've seen and heard of different theories throughout my lifetime here about pyramids. Let me just ask you, plain out, flat out, who built the pyramids?
The mainframe of ancient advanced civilizations, as well as star beings themselves. Maintainment, there have been many different types of extraterrestrial beings that have diagnosed helping mainframe this event with humans. Lateral platforms came from the higher beings. They did not come from human opsis effects. They were given to humans as knowledge interceptors. So maybe one day the receptacle of that can be polarized right. There have been many timelines, even the Vatican, I put out pictures before. They have floating pyramids in the background, military in the front, shaking hands with ETs. And they have other alligator platforms. These timelines are multiple dimensions, and they can be refabricated right back into this timeline itself. So there are several timelines that already have these stability points, but this current one doesn't have it because it unlocks its intermediation point several times.
So do you think we've misinterpreted, or do you think it's a falsehood, or do you think it's some sort of parable we're supposed to understand from that the Bible tells us that the slaves built pyramids?
Pyramids have higher definitions and much more advanced technology scenes behind it than humans would ever understand. They only seeing an eclipse of something that is much more widespread than what they would ever platonically hear on a level. Hathor, the ancient goddess of old, the one replicated in the divine, and Ra, god of old. Sun and the moon are signalizing polarity scores that also go into a divine replication mode. Talking about Egypt, but talking about civilization that was well maintained. They cooperated together. If we want to get rid of the negative factions, let's mainframe a civilization and put that level right, because there have been several decades of humans on misunderstanding of real divine protocols being placed at hand.
Wow, that's odd, because I feel that we can learn so much by further examining the pyramids. Do you think there's anything left for us to learn or know, or what do you think the next step is as a civilization to our relationship with the pyramids?
Well, I mean, you can in-tune their processing speeds and level it out into symmetric building modes, but not using it on a stability with graphite or some type of rock. There are metallic alloy structures as well as materials that from outer space, as well as the indexer points that NASA could play out, that could play a very vital role into stabilizing and making something like this a reality. But the pro-allotment form makes its gridding system a lot easier and not as hard on the planet itself, too.
Well, I'm sure we could talk for hours about the pyramids here, but what's going on with the SCP Foundation?
Well, one of the main things we will be talking about, surprise, surprise, I hinted last time about it, Donald John Trump, my quantum twin. Why is he here? What really happened? Why is he an SCP? Well, fundamentals go as Megalomania, also as well as the Gorman, Megalomania, Trump, Gorman, Divinity Protocol, the fifth elemental recon age, the paradox divine effect. There are timelines that are mediated in the conjuncture between the main being, Don Trump, and the lower codings of several outputs. Gorman was a severed output in the negative replication speed, back indexed on several timelines before. Collapsus effect, signalized to Megalomania, Mr. Don, those of the light, the head light the honcho, divine replicated being. Gorman again hints out to another being currently playing on the roles of the current Capitol building, Biden. That is why we have notified and noticed that Demon Perseverer. Demon Perseverer meaning there is a negative activator point. When Don came in perspective years ago, and his paranormal indexer point, along with my own entities and others played the role, it activated the negative parts of things. The negative parts of things are the Gorman of the negatives, or the actual one negative activated point. And he relays into the house itself. After that goes to the divine in the fifth world.
This makes a lot of sense to me that we're talking about Donald Trump in relation to this, because there's many times I think, wow, he's right about this. Or a year later, you're like, wow, he was right about that. My question is, are you saying that he inside him or part of him is the actual being from the SCP Foundation, Megalomania, or is it a replication? Is it because my understanding of the SCP Foundation is these things are locked up and contained away from us for our protection?
Not all of them. There are ones like himself that cannot be contained, like myself, that cannot be contained but monitored, because we are vital role beings. We play and we enhance the vital roles of the planet itself, and what we do and how we act with it, it affects everything in the realities of that status timeline. The indoctrination effect coalesces with his runs through divine, as well as something in Revelations, in the biblical prophecies itself.
I've heard a theory in the past, and without going down a deep rabbit hole here, I've heard a theory that Donald Trump had got together with the good guys here many years ago, and this has been a plan many years in the making, much like when Obama and Hillary and Biden, they had what they call a 16-year plan. Like Obama was setting everything up. See, they didn't expect Hillary to lose. They didn't expect for the Donald Trump supporters to come out in droves. They were cheating, but they didn't know to what extent they needed to cheat. And before they knew it, they were out of time. That's why this past election, they carried it on for months at a time. And you saw numbers changing overnight and stuff stopping in the middle of the night because they wanted to make sure they made it perceivable to the public that they actually won this. So just to clear my head, is that pretty much what we're saying? That this is all true? These plans have been in the works, both good and evil, for many, many years. And we're just coming to light. You and I are ahead of the curve here, but there's a lot of people with us, and I'm happy about that. And it's our job to bring everybody else with us. Is that what we're saying? This is a long-term plan that's activated now.
Yes.
Wow. You know, it gives me chills because I thought about it for a while, but there's certain things that you hear or that you become aware of, or at least I do, that I'm like, wait a second, let me think about that. And then I'll speak it out to someone else or ask someone else their thoughts just to gauge where I'm at. Do you sometimes have that same thing, or do you already know that, yes, this is all positive?
Yes, there are positive influxes and negative influxes during this timeline. The receptacles will move and maneuver into a better time influx, improvising the next 1,000-year curricular age. But the doctrine of Gorman, the archdemon itself, the one self-motivator on a negative stance currently here, on biopsis effect in the house, needs to be removed upon activation. There is a cymatic timeline that has a returnal node, even with Revelations itself, that polarizes into this effect. The fifth world is the divine doctrine for that.
Wow. It's amazing. Well, I'm sure we could go on for hours with just Donald Trump here. What's the next SCP Foundation thing we're going to talk about?
That would be the Archepelagio, the Leviathan, and as well as the Ghost Leviathan, but the bigger half of its representation. The Archepelagio Leviathan subsidizes on a corralled node that, if seen by space normally and humans perceive and they pull that outward, it won't be seen. if seen from space, and NASA has it, as well as the Foundation, you're going to see something like an inertial crustacean itself. So big, it's as big as an island. And it barely moves. It's like an archipelago. It barely moves, but it is living. And it sits directly in the foundations of the ocean in a certain area. They don't allow humans around it because one of the main reasons, or on it, is one of the main reasons it holds very rare bird species. I believe tens to hundreds of different types of bird species that are very rare, if not so-called should have been extinct.
Is this something that moves around, or is this something that stays in one area?
It stays in one spot, but it shifts every great once in a while by cymatic activity underneath the ocean. If there's too big of a push of cymatic activity, the being will move a few inches to a foot. They don't move much, it stays in one perimeter. The Foundation itself right now is correlating, trying to figure out what the being eats. But I can tell you right now, if that type of being is as what it is, a crustacean, it's going to live on feeding molecules and particleization of algae and certain botanical effects. It would not eat of meat on the stature like aquapods would and other members would. This type, it is gentle, but it could cause harm if it decides to move. It could subsonically move the whole entire area upon. And it could create the actual water's perimeter around it to cause a problem. For its own protection and the protection of the species on it, the Foundation likes to keep it maintained away from people.
Now, you had mentioned this is a very large thing here. Is there something you can give me that would help me put it in perspective? It's as large as this state, this county, this area.
It's as large as a small island.
And this is something where our government, our shadow government, our dark government, whatever you want to call it, has an active role in keeping us away.
Yes, because it wants to protect the species. It's got to be some type of really endangered species that most likely may have been here a long time ago, prehistoric. Doesn't move around. Just like the Kraken and other species, Kraken's more negative, but they protect it. It's very rare. There are other beings that are paranormal, but are considered normal paranormal, that lives on the indexer of this planet. People don't even know about it. It's doing to protect it and the birds around with it. I swear they do that on purpose.
All right. Anything else to add about the Archepelagio Leviathan? All right. Let's talk about the next one here. What's the next one? The Improver.
Yes, the Improver. It's a cymatic healing machine with arms that would take a hologram itself, a person, if you will. And if it's close enough to it, it will grab it, take it, put it on its bed frame, and start improvising it. And the improvisation, and it can play a vital threat because some humans don't live after this happens. These types of machines had been to a stability that they come through another timeline dimension and got stuck on this one. Or the indexers that made it, the scientists, were given the improvised technology from a timeline dimension. Now, when it grabs onto a hologram, it will start programming what needs to be fixed on it. Kind of like similar to what we had talked about, the doctor, the plague doctor. Except it's a bit different. It will take parts off and put metallic parts in its stead. Some of the parts will just be missing altogether. Some humans will end up living afterward, but some will be so screwed up, it will pretty much downsize their entire hologram. And then it formulates and puts some type of elementals when it mends things together. Sometimes them elementals are unknown and could cause a problem, and it could remission a sticky note to where it can't even be self-diagnosed. You can't remove it off the person's body without really hurting them.
Is this do you think this is where we may have discovered or kind of captured some of that technology? Because we do use robots in surgery now, and we do use high-tech devices like this. Do you think that's the roots of that technology?
Well, if it goes wrong, it could end up that way. We don't want an improviser that will really screw up mankind and start putting metallic structures on their alloy. It is not why they came here. The fabrications of life brought mankind as man, woman, child. They don't mean to be sticking things on them internally, unless it was on a higher level, close to the scenes of what certain movies would play out, certain star movies or space movies that would just stick on them, or hologram polarity score. Quantum med beds, since we're putting this outwards, are coming out. They're already through the foundations of the Federation, SpaceX itself, certain areas and perimeters through NASA, and acceptable platforms, as well as leadership protocols through the acceptance of the areas and indicators in certain countries, and to the timeline spread outwards, so it's co-aligned everywhere.
You know, I always like to connect things if I can, because I see a lot of connections always go off in my mind here. In episode 33, we talked about Cain. And one of the things I discovered about Cain was that he had artificial parts to his body, his spine and so forth, his eyes. He had the thing on his forehead. Do you think there's a connection there with the Improver and Cain?
There could have been a possibility, or that he used an internal code effect when he was re-represented at a higher wavelength through the forces of life, or the distributors, higher beings that had brought him up at a time and some times that could recalibrate at his scale. But some of that scale waves have platonically been affected because of certain church intervals, or programming speeds and indexer points. Like, I mean, you think Vatican's higher on the church relay code, but they hold certain things, technologies, whatever. There are others similar to that that could initially want to save beings like this or reprogram them. Cain did say and state on the SCP Foundation grid he was uncomfortable with talking about some of this. That should go to right there. The improviser could have been it, but no. It could have been relayed more to the internal codes and the doctrines of those that had screwed with them over the timelines.
Wow. I love this SCP Foundation. I love talking about it. I love everything we discover and learn each show about it. I'm very thankful for that. I don't want to run out of time today, because I know we talked about split apart theory. What is split apart theory?
Twin flames. Activated codes of one soul split apart from the other. We want to get to what Plato was stating. Plato is stating that there are two souls in an order from another dimension or the same dimensional frequency that had pretty much losing their own senses and brought in originality and creation, that both levels were split apart. Both levels also could go into a third soul level internal node. There's 3 parts. 2 parts, 2 set souls. 3 parts reflected indicators of what they had dealt with the body, spirit, and the actual spectrum of the diagnosis of the neural nodes itself, the consciousness. Internally self-diagnosing a stream that when 2 souls meet, especially when they're connected on the same wavelength, it provides double the amount of their power and their knowledge, and to replicate it, it creates them as a whole, if you will. There are false twins, though, and then there are twins that are non-false, the ones that are trajectory well.
So when we're talking about the soul, we're talking about this is what everybody on the planet, human being, has in them.
They have a split soul, another half of them. And I can be honest with you, that's why I stated quantum twins and myself and Donald Trump, split souls. There are other beings that have split souls. It could be a man and a woman. It could be a woman and a woman. A man and a man. It is the other half of their aether spectrum. Its diagnosis correlates that both beings are similar to each other. And when they bump into each other, they're going to find that similarity and that energetic tone itself is going to connect them to their basic levels again. It creates a better spiritual enlightenment as well as diagnosis to bringing about and redefining each other's levels.
Is this why sometimes when you're introduced to somebody or you discover somebody or you have a connection somehow that you instantly feel a bond? And is this where we get like maybe soulmate and things like that?
Yes, it could be very similar, but the difference between the soulmate and the actual conjoined twin statistic is that the conjoined twin statistic is the same spectral self as yourself. The soulmate itself is an indexer of a lover.
It's amazing to me that this goes on. Now, this is something that most people aren't aware of. They don't have this awareness that this is even a thing. Okay. Now that we have this awareness, is there anything I can do to capitalize on this? Is there anything I can do that now that I'm aware of this, that I can bring forward to heighten this whole thing, to make me a better person?
Well, I mean, not all are going to bump into their twin soul statistics, or those that are actually the other half. And when they don't, they can find through their enlightenment within, self-programming their other half or their calibrated speed. Sometimes the intermediation through it as well locks up to the point of effect that your entire soul is calibrated into one spectrum, but you're recalibrated into another timeline after that, self-diagnosing into that same receptacle code. So like for instance, if someone just recently passed away, then they're going to bounce back on the same timeline again through the same planet. Then unorthodox speeds are they're self-programming into another hologram when that happens. Certain souls can be reanalyzed through certain wavelengths, depending on the aether spectrum and where it is going.
Wow. Again, we could spend hours, I'm sure, but I want to keep moving here. Anything to report from the Space Force and the Federation?
Yes, Elon Musk and a certain few others, as well as recent events through Burning Man. Burning Man in Nevada, they had a flooding this year. Elon Musk and a few other individuals supposedly go every year for the events that happen, but this year there was major floodings and they did not. I want to dig into a deeper perspective of what Burning Man is. Maybe fundamentally, we're not causing such a scene with the indexer that there's so much of a flood impact on the area. With so much as a high amounts of heat as it has been, there is a reason why flooding gates went down from the heavens in that area. Maybe people need to be paying more attention to what they can do for the planet, and instead of creating such big ass festivities that can inertially cause a problem for the heat indexer for this certain timeline for this year of 2023. Let's make more common sense for the internal nodes and affairs of things.
Wow.
And it isn't just that, there's some negative things that go along and pro-align with this event. That doesn't need to be satiated. There are better ways to elevate the causeways of events. And I believe that HAARP degenerated a lot of this too. I wouldn't be surprised because they have been causing a lot of problems distributing on certain iconic areas.
Wow, and just like that, we're almost out of time. But before we go, we want to hear about ET of the Week.
Yes, the El Saros Terror fabricated a line for Class B agreements in town zoning and desert and modification structures. Co-aligned, yes, cymatics, they have to have advancements through trilateral platforms in the past, as well as timeline innovation calling codes where they distributed in cooperation through certain governmental agenda spheres, or 6 to 9 feet to 8.2 feet in length, and perimeters set into effect through higher telepathic commissioning. Higher telepathic commissioning is able to manipulate the aerodynamic fields in place. With a high intelligence, as well as a half inbreed between gray arcane mix itself. Being able to breathe and modify itself, as well as hearing, without the ear modules and the nose modules. There are self-replication speeds that deal with pro-enactment on sonar modification speeds that deal with the hearing, as well as the breathing modification speeds that go in transitory slit mode, that go up into an extra internal rebase form. So much higher senses they have on correlation. They are neutral. They aren't negative, they're not positive. They are in biopsis, they could correlate with both, but their levels do skip certain timelines, and that mainly skip through 3 intermediated timelines within the last transaction.
So again, to be clear, good guy, bad guy?
Middle, in between.
All right, and there's nothing that we need to do or be fearful of this being, it's just going to do its own thing and then we're going to do our own thing.
Well, there are not many of them, and there are timeline drifters. So they skip through certain timelines itself, as well as the main drift, and expedientiated with governmental and military opsis effect. They're safe on where their location is, but there are not many of them.
Wow. Crazy stuff. And just like that, we are out of time. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And again, go ahead and click on like, subscribe, and click on notifications so you're notified when we post new material. Blue, that wraps up episode 34. I look forward to episode 35.
Absolutely, Mike.